Do you think we have an ethical responsibility to the plants around us? Do you think we should be chopping down trees, pulling up onions? There was one man who believed that even plants have the right to live and that we should only be eating fruits. That man was Mango Wodzak. Mango Wodzak, the Eden Fruitarian. Who was Mango Wodzak? So he was born in England in 1961. And then after that, at a certain point, he left England, never to return. And he traveled the world, eventually settling in Australia. I believe he worked in IT. He was in Germany for a little bit. He was around Europe and Spain, and eventually made the big hop to Oceania, to Australia. He was the author of several books on ethical fruitarian lifestyle, and we'll see what he meant by that. And he coined the term Eden Fruitarian to describe his way of eating. Fruit only, removed the large seeds of the fruits. This is in contrast to other people saying they're fruitarian and eating mostly fruits, but also greens and other things, or just people in general using the term fruitarian very loosely. All right. He lived with another fruitarian, and her name was Kvetka. Her name is Kvetka Martinet. She's still alive. And he died last year. He died in 2025 in Australia. So here's books, Eden Fruitarianism. So that's my book for today, my source material. And then another book, the Eden Fruitarian Guidebook, Topsy-Turvy World, Vegan Anarchy. He wrote the foreword to a book about the ocean, Return to the Gentle Sea for the Love That Lives in Everyone. And then a volume of autobiography, Discovering Eden Fruitarianism and Autobiography. And then 2020 Vision. So that was his vision for what the world would look like, because he wrote that before 2020. All right, so the key tenets of Mango's philosophy are nonviolence. Nonviolence to all living things, including humans, including animals, including plants. So what does that imply? Does that imply that plants are sentient, that they have feeling, that they have agency? I believe Mango would have said yes. He would have said yes to those questions, all three. And if we think about it, what do plants and animals and fungi have in common, right? They have a lot in common. I mean, more than one might think. I mean, they live, they grow, they reproduce. They all do that, right? They take in information about the world and communicate that to others. Animals, they signal with their emotions, right? How they feel. Plants, they send in their roots. They communicate with, like trees in a forest. They send out information via the roots. They exchange minerals. It's quite amazing. Same with fungi, right? They have this vast underground network of interconnections with which they communicate. Plants and fungi, they don't have language, they don't have sounds, they can't make sounds, but like animals do, but they do communicate, and obviously they're all alive, right? They're all capable of growth. So the question for Mango, why fruitarian? Because it does not imply killing any plant. The fruit is offered rather than taken. You go up to a tree in an orchard and you just grab the fruit. Sometimes the fruit, and he shows in one of his videos, he just shakes like a citrus tree, an orange tree or something. He shakes it a little bit and the fruit just falls into his hand. I mean, literally, the fruit is the only food that you don't have to really work for. It comes to you. I mean, you have to be where the trees are. That's the only issue with our modern world. Um, so he shows in his book, there's a picture from the book, the evolution from shod omnivore to shoeless fruitarian. This is what he believes should be the sort of the goal of humanity, right? To go from where we are collectively to where we should be, right? And he shows his drawings here of going from the shod omnivore. Shod just means wearing shoes, and you'll notice that three of them wearing shoes, and then maybe the raw vegan guy's wearing socks, and then the fruitarian is barefoot. And yeah, and this explains also his sort of ethical evolution. It's better to eat this diet with milk, then it's better to eat a vegan diet. Then it's better to eat a raw vegan diet, and it's better to eat a fruitarian diet, according to Mango. And he shows that here with this picture. So here is what he describes also as the ethical food tower. once again, he's like rating these foods based on how ethical they are. So animals are the bottom. Yeah, you got to kill that life. That's terrible. It's awful. Animal byproducts, not much better than eating the animals themselves, right? And then after them, we go into the world of plants, right? Grains. So he puts at the very bottom. Then root vegetables, so like onions, garlic, carrots, things you have to pull up and kill. All right. And then tubers, which I guess some tubers you can harvest without the whole plant dying, right? That's why he puts them there. Maybe potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, all those things. So nuts and seeds he puts above the tubers because I guess, the plant produces it and it falls off the plant. But then, according to Mango, that contains the life. It's the seed of life. So you don't want to be eating that. And then above that, greens, because you can harvest a lot of greens and the plant grows back right from the ground. And then fruit, which, like a mature tree, will just drop out of the sky. So anyway, Mango was definitely a contrarian. That was what I described his personality as a contrarian, just through and through. I mean, for example, he refused to wear shoes. And there's a documentary about it, Pure Fruit. You can find it. You just search it up, Mango Wodzak, Pure Fruit. Documentary about his life at that time. I think it was from about 15 years ago. And like, for example, in the first few scenes, he's in a grocery store, walking around with no shoes, which, some places that's not allowed, that's illegal. Anyway, he drank little to no water. Right? He would claim, oh, I only drink maybe a liter a year. He claimed he got all of his water from fruits. He refused nutritional science. He was very stubborn. His personality was very stubborn. He said, I don't care about calories, nutrients. I just ignore it all. I just ignore it all. That was his stance on that. And then people speculated, right after his death, a bunch of videos, people speculated about his lifestyle, not drinking water, maybe fasting, maybe certain things that he ate. People said, oh, he ate too many avocados or he ate too much sugary fruits. People said all sorts of things regarding his death. But and once again, if someone's following an alternative lifestyle, this is definitely an alternative lifestyle, people will always say, oh, it was their lifestyle that contributed to their death. Once again, no one knows. So should you follow this lifestyle? That's up to you. I mean, if you think you should, go for it. But here are my opinions. It can be a refreshing change, but I wouldn't recommend it long term. It's great. Like, for example, yesterday I did a food challenge that I also posted on my YouTube channel in which I ate only fruit. And this morning, it had a very cleansing effect on my bowels. You know what I mean? If you're constipated and you're eating a lot of salt and all that stuff, this diet will just clean you out, right? It can be very refreshing. However, we are adapted as human beings to eat many varieties of plant foods, right? You look around the world, cultures, they're eating a lot of starch-based foods, right? Rice, noodles, breads, tubers, potatoes, corn, all these sorts of things. And people are eating, nuts and seeds. They are, even in traditional places, even in Africa, they eat a lot of peanuts, things like that. So definitely, if you look around the world, people are not just eating fruit, right? You can't really find a population out there that's just eating fruit as their diet for long periods of time. Ethically, the plant produces sometimes millions of seeds. There is never the expectation that they all become little plants, right? So if you think about that, like even corn, it produces, thousands, probably little kernels of corn. They wouldn't all live in nature. They wouldn't all live. They wouldn't all grow into, another 1,000 plants of corn. Most of them would just kind of rot. So the plant produces an excess of seeds, just sort of as a rule. Same with fruit. It doesn't, like an apple tree wouldn't, let's say it produces, I don't know, 500 apples. That doesn't mean that it would produce, I don't know how many seeds are in an apple, maybe 5. It doesn't mean that every single apple tree would then produce 2,500 offspring. I mean, then we would just be overrun with apple trees if that were true. And then, yes, regarding plants, nervous system, I don't doubt that they can feel, that they have sensation, that they respond to the world around them. But I don't believe that they signal pain and emotion in the same way as animals do, right? They're fixed to the ground. Animals run away. Animals live in communities. They need to depend on one another, and their pain is related to that. But a plant, sort of all the plants in nature, they're fixed to one spot. Um, they can't run away. They're not. Their nervous system isn't. They don't have a fight or flight. They can't really do that. So those are just my 2 cents regarding Eden Fruitarian lifestyle. Okay. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.